there's really no excuse anymore to not have your hands on your money, know what's going on, whether you're single, married, in an unhappy marriage, a happy marriage, it doesn't matter. Like, you have to have the conversation or at least be thinking about it, because you don't want it to be something that happens later. Like, you're going through divorce, you're trying to figure out where all of your accounts are. You've got joint accounts, so women need to really focus on it.
I'm calling it the wild, wild west out there right now with the stock market just being up and down, up and down. Wake up one day and things are up, but it's mostly down. And I know there are a lot of women who want to invest and want to get started, but is this a good time to do it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Yes, and I also would say that there's so much that's confusing out there. So I think that our guest today is really going to help us with clearing up some things, especially when it comes to finances and investing and retirement. We don't always know what to do. We don't always understand it. So I'm really excited to have Amy Anderson with us today from BF Anderson in Louisiana.
Yeah, she's going to be able to clear up some things because one of the things that I know a lot of women, especially women our age who are in their 50s and beyond, are wondering, is it too late to get started? So if you didn't start early when you were in your 20s, which is clearly the best time to start, and even in your 30s, let's say you were raising kids and so forth, and now you're back into the workplace and now it's time to get started with investing. So what do you do? Where do you start? Is it too late? You know, she'll be able to clear up some of those questions.
Absolutely. This week, we are excited to introduce Amy Anderson. And Amy has an investing service. She's a managing partner at BF Anderson. So I met Amy on Instagram, where I've been meeting a lot of people, and she is a friend of ours, Leah Square, Dr. Leah Square. So that's how I got a chance to introduce myself to Amy in the DMs, as usual.
Yes, in the DM.
Slide in the DMs and meet people. So please welcome Amy.
I thank y'all so
Welcome,
much for having
welcome.
me.
Amy,
Hi.
tell us about BF Anderson. I know that your dad is connected to it too, but tell us about BF Anderson and how you got into the whole financial industry.
Okay, and I will try to not bore you guys to tears, because everybody hears the word finance and they immediately just like glaze over, which is definitely part of my education into this realm. So BF Anderson stands for, it's sort of like, I'm sure y'all remember the commercials back in the day of like maybe E.F. Hutton, or like, they don't really advertise anymore. But financial firms back in the day, it was always, and like attorney firms, it's always like a family name or something, and it kind of gives that, like, that old school, old money, elegance sort of vibe to it. So my dad has been in the industry. His name's Andy Anderson, but his real name is Bud, but we call him Andy. And so B is in Bud, F is in Frank, and Anderson. So that is our registered investment advisory firm. All that means is we're just like we are an independent financial investment advisor firm in East Baton Rouge Parish. We work all over different states, everything, but all that really needs to mean to anybody is that, like, we don't work for Morgan Stanley. We're not a part of like a big bank or a big institution or a Merrill Lynch. Like, we are our own small business, and this is just something that a lot of advisors choose to do when they finally outgrow maybe like Merrill Lynch or working for Edward Jones or some of these bigger $5 billion big names out there. A lot of pros and cons, but we're just a small local family investment advisory firm. And I work with my dad and my associate Matt Spencer. We're all partners, and it's just us three up here at the LWCC building. If you're a local Baton Rouge person, you know where that is. So yeah, that's us.
It's real interesting hearing you talk about E.F. Hutton. It brings back memories. I remember those commercials that when E.F. Hutton talks, everybody listens.
my dad is like obsessed with that commercial, and he's always like, we need to do that. We need to, and I was like, I don't know if everybody remembers those, but it was a something, it was just those good jingles back in the day. And advertising is hard, as y'all know, and the realm of, social media, slide into people's DMs. I mean, that is the new way to really network and connect quickly, because we live in the information technology, generation now. Everything is instant and quick and fast. And so being in the financial industry, we have a lot of rules and regulations about how we can discuss what we do. And, we have to be really, really careful about how we put ourselves out there. But I have a little bit of a creative side to me as well. So I got sort of thinking more about getting on Instagram and creating content, and I had no idea, no interest really. I'm about to be 38, and so I'm in the millennial generation where like Facebook started when we went to college, and then Instagram sort of came later, and you just used it for fun. It was never a tool for anything other than that. And now in the past 5 years, it's like you have to be involved somewhere on it. You have to have some sort of like searchability. And so it started as that. And then I just one day I was like, you know what? I see all of these women, a lot of women that are calling themselves financial coaches or financial gurus, influencers on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And so I started to like dive into like, who are these people? Like, what are they doing? What's the point? How are they able to get around regulations and, all this stuff? And, if you are a coach, you're not technically like a licensed investment advisor. So in a way, it gives you freedom to do a lot more, say a lot more. But the risk with that is like they're not held to any sort of like legal liability if they were to say, hey, KJ, hey, Sanji, you should go. Here's a stock tip. Here's something. You might listen to them because you like them and go make that decision. And then it's down 60% the next day. And you're like, well, shoot, who do I talk? So there's a lot of, you have to be really careful about where you get your financial information from, who you're getting it from. Even licensed people make mistakes, but most of us sort of know like the line that you can toe. But neither here nor there, I decided I wanted to make content. I wanted to make things fun. I really love talking with women. I mean, I love men too, but like women, whenever I sit down with friends that are my age, that are getting into their careers or starting small businesses, I really want to be the person that they can turn to and not feel, number one, like bored out of their minds. Number two, like I'm adding something to their plate. I try to just be that go-to pivot point of like, okay, let's talk about like why you should become an S corp, how that benefits you, and then what type of retirement account should you maybe open that's going to help your business and help you. So that's sort of been where I've been focused lately, but primarily I do just manage people's individuals' money in the stock market and try to grow their money. That's the whole point. I want them to have something that they can look forward to in the future, depend on.
So why do you think it's so important for women to like really take charge of their financial future?
I was drawn to it personally because I am in this industry and I made so many mistakes as a person, as a human. I was in a couple pretty toxic relationships. I was married previously. I was engaged previously. I am married now. This is the one. He's great. But before that, I just, I wanted the traditional like get married. This will be my job, but I want to be a wife and all this sort of, nothing wrong with that. That's still like a reality for a lot of people. But I learned the hard way about, even though here I am with all this background and experience and I'm helping other people and telling them what to do, but then I was making not the best decisions with like putting money to the side for me, making sure I had access to like both of our accounts if I was in a relationship with somebody, and then divorce in Louisiana, learning about how that works in a community property state when you own assets together, especially if you're the breadwinner. It's not always a big, you don't know. It just it can get ugly fast, and you can go into debt really quickly if you're not careful, especially if you're on the younger side and you're just getting into your career. So really, it came from a place of like survival. And so I just am like, anytime I hear a woman say, especially a small business owner, especially somebody that's worked really hard in their career path, whether they're a professional, a doctor, an attorney, you can be the smartest person in the room and still not have like your finances or like your estate the way it should be to protect you and your loved ones. So it really comes from that place of like, girl, like we're stepping in, we're stepping up, and there's really no excuse anymore to not have your hands on your money, know what's going on, whether you're single, married, in an unhappy marriage, a happy marriage, it doesn't matter. Like you have to have the conversation or at least be thinking about it because you don't want it to be something that happens later, like you're going through divorce, you're trying to figure out where all of your accounts are. You've got joint accounts, so long story short, women need to really focus on investing in their finances, not just as like a reactive thing, but as a proactive approach to like building your confidence, knowing that if you are in relationships, it's because you want to be in them, not because you're stuck. And then number three, with the way the world is, if you have 10, 20, 30 years to put your money to work in the background while you're working and you have this energy and you're young and everything, that right there, it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market and the compounding growth that your dollar will accumulate over time. But if you wait till it's too late, you're 55, 65, and you're like, Social Security is not what I thought it was going to be. Medicare is not that great. My pension was not that great. You're hoping you've got something somewhere else that's going to help alleviate, you know, living at that point. So, and we're living longer, and women typically live longer. So, we need to know. We need to have our money working for us, no doubt.
Absolutely. So let's say I'm a woman and I'm saying, okay, Amy, I agree with you. I'm ready to get started. So like, what are some of the beginner steps that women need to get started with growing their wealth?
Hmm. Well, I typically I'll sit down with somebody or we take a phone call. There's no fee to talk to me. Like I'm bad about this. I'll give away so much because I was lucky enough to grow up in a family where I had a father figure who was really like proactive with like me working, me going to college, me learning about finances, whether I worked with him or not. And the Wall Street Journal was always out on the table. He was always talking about stocks. So I sort of was absorbing it even from like a young age. And I know not a lot of young people and women and men didn't have that luxury. And so if I can shortcut some things for people, I'm happy to do that. So really what I like to do is sit down with somebody and first off find out, if you're employed, does your employer offer you a 401k plan? If you're a teacher, a 457 plan. There's different types of retirement plans out there. Your most common one is going to be your 401k. If you work for a big company, they're going to give you an option to contribute or participate in that. So if I find out that you have one of those, I can't manage it, but I can at least look at it with you, help you understand some of it because a lot of companies, even though they offer 401ks, they don't offer any education with them. I can't remember the last time I heard someone say, "Oh, I work for like um a big hospital here, very big hospital here, and we have 401ks, but nobody's ever come and showed us even how to log in or how to look at them. I don't know if they offer me a match to my contribution. So I really try to make sure like that if that is something that they have, they've got it existent, they can access it, they know what they're in. If there is a match, meaning like, okay, you, Sanji, if you have a 401k with a company and you've been there 5 years and they say, okay, look, you're a good employee. You're not leaving us. We want to make sure that we keep you and have competitive benefits for you. For every like 3% or 6%, we're going to match you 100%. So you're putting in 6% of your paycheck, they're going to match that 6%. So it's 100% return on your money. So I see a lot of people miss those opportunities to at least get the match that their employer's willing to offer because it's free money, and it's just sitting there and it could be yours. You just didn't know to go check off something there. So that's the number one thing. And number two, I like to find out like, what is your debt situation? Are you in debt? How's the cash flow feeling? Are you single? Are you married? Double income? What's going on? You have kids. So once you get those questions, you can sort of get into like, do you have an emergency fund? Do you know what I mean by an emergency fund? Everybody's got different names for it, but I like to make sure people at least are like, okay, 401k, we know what that is. Yes, I have debt. I have a mortgage. I have student loans. I have crazy credit cards. Okay, we're going to talk about that. But then that's a different subject. But then it's like, okay, do you have an emergency fund, which is really just a fancy, scary name for like you have a savings account. Okay, is it a high yield savings account? Because right now, and it's not always going to be like this. There's a lot of banks out there, especially online banks that you can get 3 to 4% interest for free on your savings. So definitely make sure you're not in a savings account that doesn't yield anything. Because there's a lot that are just 0%, but there's a lot of companies like SoFi, Ally. There's a bunch. I mean, if you look, even at your bank, you probably have access to one. Some of them require minimum, some of them require certain things, but make sure every dollar you always have is doing something. So I tell people have 3 to 6 months of essentials. So bills that you have to pay, your mortgage, your car note, your gas, your kids' school, insurance. You just make sure you have at least 3 to 6 months. For single mothers, I'm saying 6 months because if you get hit hard and you start having to swipe those credit cards that have 30% interest on them, it's a really hard hole to climb out of. Speaking from personal experience of not having an emergency fund and getting hit hard and having to get out of debt. And then we get into like, all right, let's talk about investing if you have anything to the side, let's look at that. And even if you have debt is not necessarily the enemy to investing. Yes, you need money for both, but I will tell you that if you have high credit card debt, like I was looking at a Southwest card that we have that we use to get points for flights and we pay off the balance religiously. But if you don't, it's like a 29%. It's insane. And I mean, you look at any of them, they're loan sharks essentially, but you have to attack high interest credit cards are awful, awful, awful. If you have any and you cannot get control of them, you might have to take a hit and do like a balance transfer to another credit card company that is offering like a 21 to 24 month interest free and then just like go after it like it stole your lunch money. Like, do not let up until you get that thing paid, whatever you got to do, because it just gets so expensive. And those interest charges will alone keep you from ever paying off a credit card. But like a mortgage, okay, student loans, those are typically 15 to 30-year debts. And it's between 3 to 7% interest that you owe with it. That's not, nobody likes having debt, but most people can budget that and manage that. And you can consolidate, get better rates. There's ways to figure those out. It's really the high interest credit cards that scare me and should scare anybody. And that's when those emergency funds come in and keep you sort of out of falling into those traps. Did that answer your question? I don't know. I kind of probably went on a tangent.
No, it totally does.
And that's really good information. Again, like Sanji said, we were talking to someone about credit not too long ago, and it does get a little bit scary. But how can you balance paying down debt while still trying to invest? Or
Yeah.
What do you feel like is a good amount of money to try to invest?
So it's per person, everybody's different and what they're going to need and their health issues. But I guess to give sort of a hypothetical of how I would look at it, if you went and got a cup of coffee today at CC's, you got a latte with oat milk, it's going to be about $6 to $7. So $6 to $7 cup of coffee in 20 to 30 years. Well, let's say 30 years. I have a little compounding calculator that I like to use that gives you an idea of just like how things increase. So if I put that at a 10% interest rate over the next 30 years, that $6 cup of coffee is more like a $130 cup of coffee. All I'm trying to sort of say is that if you have time and you have as little as $100, you can start investing. It's not for the wealthy only. It's not for men only. It's for everybody. And I think it's just been one of these feelings that was created a long time ago. And it was sort of like, well, we can't, how do we have access to this? This is like the boys club thing. And now the education's out there. Women are much more involved than they used to be. They want to invest and they tend to be better investors. They can handle volatility better. Who would have thought? Like, of course, like
Right.
you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a small business owner, we're multitaskers. So we're actually more patient investors. Well, our egos are not as affected when we don't do well. We can sort of handle the fluctuations. But like I said, debt does not have to be a competitor to investing. I'll say this, you have to pay off debt, but you have to invest too. And that's sort of a stressful statement. And I don't like to say it that way, but we're living in a time and an age where things have gotten so outlandishly expensive. They'll probably never reverse. Things might cool off a little bit, but you have to put any money you have to work that you can budget into it, just almost like automate it, like the way that you automate your utility bills. Think of it like that with investing. So there's tons of places where you can open accounts. There's Charles Schwab, there's Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, Vanguard, Robinhood's popular. There's all these different, almost everybody is trying to get people to invest, even Cash App. I saw this guy that was working at my house the other day painting. He's like this young kid. He's like 21, and he knew that I did stock investing, and he was like, "Amy, how do I start? How do I start doing this? I noticed on my Cash App where I get paid that I can buy stocks on here." And I was like, "What?" I had no idea that they
Yeah,
were like,
you can.
that means kids that have Cash App under the age of 18 can buy stocks. Like that's cool and
Right.
kind of scary at the same
They
time.
buy stocks and they can buy crypto.
Yes, Lord. Crypto is not for me. My brain does not have enough energy to understand all of the intricacies of commodities and currencies. And I stick to stock investing, and which is equally challenging, but I understand it. It makes sense to me. I've been like shadowing my father, who's been in the industry for 50 years. So I've seen all of his mistakes. I've learned about him going through the different like market crises, like Black Monday, which was in 1987. It was like a Monday where the market fell like 30% one day, and then in like a couple months, it had already fully come back. So I've learned about different market historical patterns that have happened that drive people crazy. And being a millennial, we went through Y2K, we went through the dot-com bubble, or we watched our parents or grandparents go through it, the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008, and then most recently the pandemic. So we have seen it all, and there's probably more to come, but you have to look at it as just like this is something that it's delayed gratification. I am putting my money into something that is designed to be there for me later. That's not sexy. It's not fun. It's kind of like, well, shoot, no, I'd rather plan this trip or I'd rather do this but you can live, you can pay off your debt, and you can invest too. And all it takes is just sitting down with somebody and really like looking at what you have and what you have to pay. And you'd be shocked if you have at least this much that could go towards that, whether it's your pre-existing 401k plan at work, or you want to open your own individual retirement account, or you're a small business and you want to open a SEP IRA with your to help with your business and to defer your income a little bit so that you pay less in taxes. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but credit cards, attack them. You can sacrifice investing for credit cards, but everything else, your mortgage, student loans, things like that, you can do a little bit of both because historically speaking, if you were to just open a individual account or an IRA, an individual retirement account at Charles Schwab for free, just fill out an application like you're applying to open a bank account. You'll get approved. You I would just tell people if you don't have an advisor and you don't have a lot of experience, and I'm not giving a stock tip, but I'm just saying, like, this is generally speaking, if it were me, I would just put my money in an S&P 500 index fund, and there's thousands of them. You just have to pick which one. They have like a huge selection you can choose from, and they're different with how much it costs to own this one and how much of a minimum you have. Some are like 1,500 to start, some are $100 to start. But that's just like a general, just basic, diversified place to start. Because historically speaking, S&P 500, which is the 500 largest companies on New York Stock Exchange, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, Microsoft, Tesla, Lululemon, the list goes on and on, Ulta, Sephora, all the different things. Typically, over a 100-year study, after even inflation and taxes, you can expect anywhere from like an 8 to 10% return, like over time. So your money is growing at that. If you have 20 to 30 years, even with all the bumps and up and down, you're basically going to make about 10% annualized on your money. And it can make a huge difference. Like to start, the earlier you start, the better chances you have of like seeing your money double, quadruple, just on and on and on like a snowball.
Yeah, so let's say I do want to do the S&P 500. I want to take your advice and get into the S&P 500. And you mentioned the IRAs. Let's dive deep into the IRAs. There's the traditional IRA. You mentioned the Roth IRA. You mentioned the SEP IRA. Like,
Yeah.
what if we don't know what all that is? Which route to go? Can you tell us more about
Ooh,
IRAs and how they function?
sure. Okay. I think most people have heard of a traditional IRA. It's an account you open that is purposely for retirement. So once you open it and you put money in there, that it's typically money that is not, taxes have not touched it yet. So it's like pure money. So you start with $500. No taxes have been paid on that $500 yet. It gets to go into this nice little IRA account, and that is not going to be available to you until you're 59 and a half. You can still access the money, but unless it's for a first time, like purchasing a home, there's certain exceptions, right, to avoid a penalty. But if you try to go in and pull it because you're in an emergency or you want to buy this truck or something that doesn't qualify, you'll get charged. The IRS will hit you with like a 50%, or no, excuse me, a 10% penalty, but you'll also be paying tax as well on that. So it can, take a big chunk of whatever
Painful.
you pull out of there. So it's really important if you open an IRA to remember that and to know that this just like a 401k IRA, they kind of belong on the same boat. They have the same sort of like rules, like disciplinary rules of like cannot touch until 59 and a half. And then you can touch and pull out, your principal, your earnings. You will pay tax on those at the time that you pull them out, but maybe you're at a lower tax bracket. Some people wait until they're 70, right? As of 2025, you can wait until you're 73 to start pulling from an individual retirement account or a 401k. But you have to, after 73, the government, IRS will force you, not force you, but they're called required minimum distributions. And every year you have to take a certain amount out and start paying taxes. And, so it's dependent on everybody's financial situation and, what tax bracket they're in, how they want to go about that. But I think everybody could benefit from having a individual retirement account and a Roth IRA. So traditional IRA and then Roth IRA, because they both grow over time. They're both designed for retirement. One you will pay tax on later, and one you've already paid the tax on the money before it goes in. The beauty of that, the Roth IRA, is that you can only put 7,000 in a year. That's a downside to it. Same thing with a traditional IRA, by the way. If you have two of them, you can't put 7,000 in your traditional IRA and 7,000 in your Roth IRA. You can only put a total of 7,000 between the both of them, or just all into one, or it has to equal out to 7,000. So that's why also starting earlier is better, because if you're, 45 and just starting and you can only put 7,000 in, you only have 15 years really until something like that, 15 to 20 years. No, you could still, I don't want to say that because my husband just turned 45 and I convinced him to do a Roth IRA. So I'm like, no, it's going to be fine. You just got to really like go for it. But the Roth is a beautiful thing, because if you really get that thing going and you just kill it, like you miss all the bad years or you get through them and you grow. Maybe you start with 75,000. I think I used this as an example the other day. 75,000 for like 20 to 25 years at like a 10% like growth rate. Hypothetical, of course. I mean, you're looking at like 400,000 just earnings off of 75,000. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to go through moments, but like that small amount of money could basically yield you almost 400,000. So imagine if like you put more to work or things like that, and then that whole 400,000 is tax free. So when it's time to start pulling that money out after 59 and a half, whenever you want, you don't owe any taxes on it. It's your money. So that's a benefit to the Roth, I guess. It's just that lack of having to think about that.
SEP IRA.
SEP IRA is great. I have one because we're a small business. There's three of us here. They're best for solo sort of business owners, or like 1 to 2 to 3 people maybe. Because if you're a W-2 employee and you have an S corp or an LLC, and you can just be a small business, and it doesn't matter if you're an LLC or an S corp or a C corp. If you want to have it's a simplified employee pension IRA, and it's just designed to help business owners that want to put more. Like if you are making a lot, you're making over 100,000, and you want to put away more than 7,000, which is your limit with a traditional or a Roth IRA, you can put away as much as, I think it's like 23 to 25% of your total income as a business owner in every year into a SEP IRA. So if you, just for math simplicity's sake, if you make 100,000, you can, before tax and everything, you can contribute up to 20, 30 to 25,000 to your IRA, your SEP IRA. And then another fun part of that is that it knocks down your taxable income. So you pay less in taxes. You're getting to contribute a lot to a retirement account that's growing in the background. So it's sort of like it's got like a double effect of, less taxes, another way to like not legally pay as much in taxes and be growing it in the background, like as you're building your business. SEP IRAs are great, but if you have like 10 employees and they're W-2, the problem with that is that if you contribute as the business owner to your SEP IRA of 25%, you also have to the company has to contribute to each W-2 employee's SEP IRA 25% of their income. So that's where it's better for it to be truly a small business with either one, two, three W-2 owners or employees, or be a small business and not have W-2 employees, maybe 1099, because then you're not forced to also have that um, plan in practice. It can be a really great tool for sure.
So, Amy, what are some of the misconceptions that you hear about investing? Can you clear some things up?
Okay. Well, I mentioned one, which is that you have to already be this wealthy individual. Investing's always had this sort of like, I'm trying to think of the word. It's like a boys club mixed with like country club mixed with, my great grandfather who was a railroad guy left me these like stock certificates. Like there's just like this really funny, everybody knows who Warren Buffett is, right? The king of Omaha.
Yes.
He talks and people listen. He sells a stock, people go sell. He sells Intel, they go sell Intel. He sells Boeing, they go sell their Boeing. And it's like, how did this man become the Wizard of Oz, so to speak? I love Warren Buffett. He's kind of known as like the sweet grandfather legend investor like of our time, but there's a ton of amazing books you can read about people that became investors just through like crazy stories. But Warren Buffett is fabulous. He's a big proponent of women investing, big into financial literacy and helping break down like those barriers, because just having definitions to things changes the whole game, like just knowing what a Roth IRA is, just knowing what a stock is, just understanding these basic concepts in a space where you don't feel stupid, where you don't have like all these egos trying to like explain something to you. So, yes, the misconception is that like this is a suit and tie corporate world that only certain people belong in, and that's just not the case. Like, sorry, but eh, if the ruse is up, like we can all invest, and you can invest for as little as, like I said, I mean, really $1. You can get started. So that once you clear that up, then it gets into the idea of like, well, how much time do I have? How many things, you know, am I healthy? Am I going to need like extra care? Am I going to be single? Am I going to have a double income situation? Who is going to take care of me after the age of 70? And you have to be thinking like, it's going to be me. No matter what, it's going to be me. Social Security, Medicare, things like this like should not be your only fail safe, because as we know, Social Security is probably not even, it's probably money being borrowed from other departments to fulfill it, to give people this sense of safety. I don't like that. I would rather, if individuals had been given, this is kind of a controversial thing to say, but like if individuals had the option to opt out of letting the government manage Social Security, which we don't even know what they have in invest. I don't know what it's in. How are they growing it? Where is it? Can I see it? Like, if they said, "Hey, look, instead of us just taking it out of your paycheck, you have to invest that yourself instead." Oh my gosh, like you would have so much more to like. I think as your monthly benefit, if you just put in the S&P 500 over the course of like your time as a citizen. So that always kind of rifles me a little bit. But just it was designed, it was set up. I forget which president started it, but it was set up as a thing to really be truly putting money to the side for American citizens for when they retired or if they became disabled or. But it's just, I don't know. Sorry, I get off in the weeds
Yeah, it's
on
quite
that
the mess,
one.
and people are
Yeah.
uncertain and unsure.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of any other like myth busting things about it, but really it's just if you're working hard and you have your life ahead of you and you have children or you don't have children, it really doesn't matter. Like investing is a necessity. It's not really a luxury. A lot of things are luxuries, right? Like we can go without a lot of things, but you have to be a human being that no matter how successful you become, like Warren Buffett, you can still drive a Volvo. You can still drive a Honda. You don't need that Mercedes, even though we like that Mercedes. You can live in a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom house. You don't need the 10,000 square foot. You just have to make sure that like you can always bounce back. You can cut back if you have to, but you don't want any money sitting under a mattress, buried in your backyard. It's got to be working somewhere. And we do live in a country that gives us the ability to invest our money. We're very lucky in that sense. Not every country has like a banking system that safely protects your money and guarantees like the FIDC and the SIPC for investing covers as much as like I think 250,000 per investment account. I'd have to go dig into that, but yeah, you need to be putting money away. You
Just
need to
just
to
do it.
do it, and you need to understand it a little bit, and it feels good, like when you're sitting at a table and you hear your brother or like a husband or his friends talking about the silly crypto stuff they're doing or what it's not silly, but I just I can't participate. But you can chime in and be like, oh, is that in your Roth IRA or is that in your what how are you able to do that in there? It's it's important to be a part of conversations and to not feel like people are talking over your head. And in my line of work at my age, I have been in the room many a time and felt like people, even my own age, were talking over my head. And I was like, is this how they talk to their clients? And it is. And I'm like, I think that that's sort of like a form of insecurity, because even doctors, like good doctors, they know when their patients sit in front of them how to speak in doctor talk and they know how to speak in like human talk. The good ones do, not all of them, depending on the bedside manner. But I feel like it's the same thing with the financial realm. Like I base it, I scale it off of the person that's in front of me. If they are just new, old, young, doesn't matter, but they just are like, ugh, this is not for me. My husband's always handled it. My dad always handled it. Those are my favorites because when that light bulb comes on, it comes on big. And they're like, wow, this really wasn't that bad. I thought it was going to be so hard to understand. And it's not. It's not easy investing because like for instance this year alone we got a very tough start to the year. So like if you were just getting started and you'd opened an account in January and you'd put, I don't know, let's say you put like 17,000 or I'm just trying to even think of an account off the top of my head that I have that's on the smaller side. The
10,000.
market's
Say 10,000.
10,000. Okay. Well, you would probably be coming back from a like eight. Well, the S&P 500, last I checked, I think it's still down about 15% year to date. So that's kind of a tough pill to swallow. Like, especially if you're just getting started, you're like, what the heck? Okay, put my money in, it's gone. But this is just sort of this is part of it, is that as much as it can go up and in your investments, your stocks that you pick can have these fantastic products or services or new technologies that they introduce that skyrocket them up, like an Apple, like a Tesla, and Amazon. When they first when they first became publicly traded companies available to you and me as small investors to own little slices of, nobody knew who they were. They were like high risk type situations because at the beginning, something like an Amazon, that was just an online bookstore. And like nobody understood what the point of that was. They're like, okay, I could just go to the library. Like, why do I need Amazon? Like, what a ridiculous name, like what is this? And now it's, worth what, like 2 or 3 trillion dollars,
I
and it's everywhere and it's in everything, but nobody could have calculated something like that. So you have to have a level of like entrepreneurial spirit. You have to, that's why small business owners are usually good investors because they understand that there will always be risk with reward. But if you are someone that gets into the market and you're like me or you're one of my clients, we invest in individual stocks. So I don't invest in index funds, mostly because I want to put people in a position to get really concentrated growth in things. So I want to find the next Amazon. I want to find the next Walmart. I want to find the next Tesla. Like I want to be combing the beaches, and I have a filtering system that puts thousands of stocks in front of my dad and I every week. And we sit with our coffee and we review charts, review fundamentals, and we try to pick 10 companies, stocks that are doing something disruptive, unique, um, that could maybe catapult them as being the next, like, one of those companies. And it's very possible. So that's sort of what makes us different and very niche is that we're not a fund of funds over diversified thousands of things. It's literally like 10 stocks, 10%. So if you have $100,000 with me, $10,000 is in a company like GE Vernova or DoorDash or Netflix or gosh, what was the other one I was looking at the other day? A company called Halozyme. Halozyme is the technology behind all of the subcutaneous needles for Eli Lilly and all of the weight loss drugs. And so, you find these different, you kind of become a researcher and you learn a little bit about everything out there and what people are drawn to and what industries are drawn to. And you pretend you're like Warren Buffett, like you're buying businesses, even though in reality you're just buying shares of stock of those businesses. But you just have to think like you're a wealthy old man and you'll be fine.
Individual stocks may be the way to go for some people because you mentioned earlier that it's best to start early to plan for your retirement. But what if you're a woman who spent most of that time raising children? You got married, you're raising children, you might be a stay-at-home mom, then you're entering the workforce after you raised your kids, and now you look up and you're in your late 40s or even in your 50s. Is
Yeah.
it too late to start? Because
No.
as you mentioned, the Roth IRAs and the traditional IRAs, you can only
Hmm.
invest the $7,000 per year.
Right.
So is it the individual stocks is the way to go if you're starting late, or would you still recommend the traditional or Roth IRAs? Like, what do you do if you're starting late?
Well, if they're going back to work or you have a small business, you have to have some form. If you're a single mother type situation, you have to have some form of like income to qualify for those. You can also open accounts that are just purely to invest stocks, and they don't have to be what we call qualified accounts like IRAs or Roth. They're called brokerage accounts, or at Charles Schwab, they're called individual accounts. And it's just like a savings account essentially that you just buy and invest in stocks. You do pay taxes on those though. Like if you have a really good year where you're up 20% that year and you sell and take gains, you will that shows up as income on your taxes every year. But in the same vein, if you have a bad year and you're down 20%, you can also net your losses against your gains to sort of play that. Also, want to have a good CPA. Cannot say that enough. Have a great accountant, CPA, bookkeeper, but definitely a CPA, especially in small business, because there's so many things you can mess up on and you need the help if you get into trouble with the IRS. But no, it's never too late to start. I know men and women that are in their 80s and 90s that still invest in individual stocks. My dad, for one, he's turning 72 this year. He'll never stop. He's going to keep growing his money and growing his money until he's in the ground. Same thing with a friend of ours. He's in New Orleans. He's 90 years old and he loves investing in individual stocks. It's like, sort of, it keeps your mind super active and it's an intellectual curiosity and staying involved with your money and like, being a part of that. But if you don't have time, if owning individual stocks is way too risky and you don't have a financial advisor to watch it and manage it for you, I'm always going to say just put it in an index fund and just contribute what you can every year and just let it build. It's better than nothing. It's a lot better than nothing and just sitting on your hands. And opportunities strike when you least expect it. So, like, already being involved with your money like that, and then someone that your great great uncle that you didn't know about passes away and you inherit like, I don't know, $5 million, and you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna put it, like it's you want to just be involved in it somehow, some way, because it's the people you always hear about, those people that come into money, whether it's the lottery or through a deceased relative or insurance, something. They don't know what to do with it when they have it and they spend it, or people take advantage of them or whatever. So never too late. I'm probably going to be one of those people, and because I'm in the industry, to where I'll be 95 years old, sitting in my rocking chair, still, investing in stocks, because it's for me, it's fun. It's stressful, but it's fun, because when you find a winner, something that like last year for me, I'll tell you, I don't own it anymore, but it was a company called GE Vernova, and they're involved in nuclear. And like, do I look like a nuclear physicist to you? No. But I also am a part of the generation that understands that we are putting so much pressure on the grid, on like our power sources, our electricity. And nuclear, even though you hear the word nuclear and you automatically think like danger, you think like Chernobyl, Hiroshima, all these things, like, no, nuclear is one of the safest, cleanest forms of energy that we can utilize for our country, for like growing nations, everything. So all of a sudden, the Tennessee Valley Authority has approved the use of like these old nuclear facilities to start reopening, but like with better technology, better safety features, less investment, to start sort of coming in and replacing a lot of these grids and wind, solar power, and things that sort of create more problems than product. So that was a company I got into last year that I looked into and chased down, and I made a really great return in it, and I love talking about it. I had to sell it because as we started this year, there was just a lot of volatility with all the changes and tariff fears and new president, and there's a lot going on. And sometimes, even if a company is a great company, if there's too much emotion, too many people watching headlines and news, and just overly hyped, you get a really like choppy meat grinder type of environment. So someone like me is like, I'm going to cash, I'm getting defensive, I'm going to take my wins, I'm going to take my losers, I'm going to wait until things settle down and then re-enter. But most people have to just sit through it because they're in index funds, and you have to sit through those 20% drops. Hopefully you're not 65 going through a 20% drop. That's rough. It changes your landscape a little bit, but you can keep growing your money until you're dead. So it's just an attitude you have to have. Uh, but yeah, it's I obviously really like what I do, but I feel a lot of responsibility because I'm managing that people like family, friends, clients that find me. And as a woman, like naturally, like I always want to give them good news. I always want to have an optimistic attitude about it, but I'm also very realistic, and I can't control, when things go awry or when we're in trade wars and things like that. I'm more there at least to say, this is what's going on. This is what we're going to do to strategize. And we are just going to hope for the best and do the most risk mitigating that we can.
One thing I wanted to ask you, when you were talking about being in the room with other people and they're talking stocks and money and maybe you don't know anything, can you tell us what are some of like the resources that women can use, books, apps, anything to learn a
Okay.
little bit more so that they kind of have some knowledge? They have all those dummy books,
Yes.
thing for dummies and this for dummies. But are there anything that we can read or, study?
Glad you asked, because so you don't always have to read the dummy books. The dummy books are great, but we know what I recommend. If you're not using Chat GPT and you can't fully trust it, you do have to. I hope it's not listening to me, but like you do have to sort of like research
Double
it
check
a little
it.
bit. Chat GPT has been a great tool I've found for like breaking down complicated stuff. I would also say there's a great website called Investopedia. It's like Encyclopedia Investopedia, and it's just got really great visuals and like YouTube's breaking down everything from Roth IRAs to, real estate to, anything you can think of. There's a search box, type it in, and it'll give you a nice little encyclopedia type definition that is in layman's terms. So there's still things I don't understand, and I'll go get on Investopedia and look it up. But I'm, I don't know if y'all are bookworms, but I'm getting better about being a bookworm. I wasn't for a while. My brain was so overactive. I've been working on that. But I love this book. This is called it looks kind of corny, but it's called The Successful Investor. And it's what 80 million people need to know about investing profitably and avoiding big losses. And it's by William O'Neill. So he started Investors Business Daily, and this is like a really little, it's not much. And you probably only need to read like half of it, but it breaks things down in a very like common sense way about getting started investing. So this is a great book, because it's short, it's to the point, it's not over your head. Some of it might be, but like just highlight it and come back to it later. Okay, this is actually the first book I read when I decided to come into this industry, because I was like, there's so many books. Like everyone has an investment book. But this one is Jesse Livermore. He was known as the speculator king. And this is like a story of his life. It's sort of written as it's a nonfiction, but it's about this guy that came into investing in the stock market in the 20s. He was an orphan, grew up in the streets of New York, and he would work in what was called bucket shops, which were like, if you've seen old movies where the investment, like literally you would walk into these rooms filled with people shouting and yelling, and they're like these little kids on I sound crazy, little kids on ladders, and they're like writing the changing prices of like sugar and like hay and like that, and these were called bucket shops. I forget why. But it's about him growing up as this like really rags to riches story of this kid who just started going into these shops where these wealthy men in suits and business in New York in like the 20s and 30s were doing this, and he was learning about like price movements and stuff. So it's kind of a like Oliver Twist kind of story. I enjoyed it. You can still make it in the market. This is by a guy named Nicholas Darvis. He was a famous, legendary Hungarian dancer in the 1940s and 50s. He's from Hungary, and he was like a Fred Astaire type. And I remember what got him into investing, and he wrote a bunch of books, and he's real into individual stocks. Like he was very much, that's how he made all of his money. He's got a few books, but this was just one of them. You can still make it in the market. So it's helpful for like when you're going through bear markets or like recessions or tough times like this. But he was an interesting character because he only learned how to invest because for one of his gigs where he was dancing, they couldn't pay him, so they paid him in like Canadian mining stock, and he just like forgot about it. And I think it was like 5 years later he went and looked at this account, and it was only like $500, I think, in the stock, and it had grown to like 10,000 after 5 years. And so he was like, "Whoa, what is this?" And so it sort of encouraged him to get into, while I'm traveling the world, Hong Kong to Europe to all these places, doing these, dancing for people like Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, I'm going to put my money to work on New York Stock Exchange. And like he made $2 million in the 50s from, I think, 10,000. And I think in today's numbers, it's like 400 million or something crazy. So it just, it's exciting to think about possibilities like that. It's not going to be like a get rich overnight type deal, but it's something that is worthwhile. And it's not just like you know, do this here and, you'll get X, Y, and Z. There's definitely like a level of speculation to it. But no matter what, have to do it. And there's different ways you can do it. I'm always available. You can reach me through my email. You can find me with Fiscal Fox, which I didn't even mention. That's my Instagram handle. No, it has nothing. It doesn't sound like BF Anderson, but I liked it. I came up with it one day as I was playing around with other names, and it just stuck, and I got good feedback from it. So I try to create a lot of digestible market information on my Instagram. So that's a great way to find me. That's how you found me, KJ. So you can slide in my DMs and I will respond. So
Well, this has been awesome. I mean, I would say, Amy, since you just told us your information on how to get in touch with you, last question. What's next in your mission to help women take control of their finances?
that's a great question. That's one I'm still trying to figure out. It really, this movement for me of financial literacy and empowerment, it's nothing new. I just didn't have words for it. And it was a personal journey because honestly, I could have just stayed in the shadows and just kept doing what I'm doing where I'm managing people's money, and not really like getting out there in front of women. But I think for me, like I said, it was personal. And when I came out of my journey, and turned things around, I was like, there are so many other women that this is happening with, and they need to know that they can do the same thing and that they're not stuck. You're never stuck. Um, there's so many other women out there that want to help you, and women now are a lot more of a village than they used to be. Like I've had nothing recently but really good interactions with women in the community and small business, just helping each other, leaning on each other, trying to help build the other up. And so that's all I want to represent. It's just like another part of that puzzle for really anybody, but women, I just obviously, like, I feel like we were sort of, this was not something that was encouraged at a young age, with money, especially living in the South. You know how it can be. Like there's much more of like a traditional ideology down here. And the further you get, into the bayous or other places, the more you will see that like it's just we're behind and we don't need to be. So yeah, it's important to me. Mostly women that feel like they can't leave situations because their husband is the one that has always managed money and always, and it's like, no, we are just as good at it, if not better. You just need someone to shine the light on it for you a little bit and, help you take that leap. So that's important to me. And I love seeing women like go after it and be like, yeah, I have a Roth IRA. Yeah, I have a SEP IRA and I have a small business and I don't sleep and it's tough out there, but like they're doing all the right things and it's going to pay off in spades, not only for them, but like their daughters, if they're paying attention, their grandkids, like you're creating like generational wealth in so many different ways. It's very powerful. So yeah, I don't know. I have big dreams. I just don't know exactly how they will translate, but I hope I can help as many women that are interested to learn about this.
I just know you're going to reach your dreams because your mission is really to help. So that's a really wonderful thing. Really
Thank
wonderful.
you.
So
Yeah.
we want to thank you so much for coming on. I know I learned a lot. You really have me thinking about what I need to do next.
Yeah.
I want to
You
make
know where to
sure
find me.
that I exactly. I know where to find you. We want our listeners and viewers to know where to find you as well. So we thank you so much for sharing your information. But
Yeah, thank you for
yeah,
having me. I enjoyed myself. But like it is, it's our website is bfanderson.com, but really where you're gonna see me truly like talking about things and sort of like letting my hair down is gonna be on my Instagram, which is the Fiscal Fox. Reach out anytime. Doesn't cost anything to talk to me. I just want to get the ball rolling if I can for somebody and open some doors.
Nice.
excellent. Thank you so much.
So, Sanjay, what were some of the takeaways for you today with Amy?
So what I liked about her was that she was just saying, just jump in, just get started. Don't hesitate, just do it. I was really moved by the fact that she was talking about her father who was in his 70s and she said he's going to continue to invest until he goes into the grave, as well as one of the clients that she's working with who's in their 90s who's continuing to invest. So I just really like the fact that she shared some ideas on how to get started with Roth IRAs, the traditional IRAs, the SEP IRAs, and then because they're only allowing you to invest $7,000 per year, then maybe going in the direction of individual stocks might be the way to go.
I love that Amy is really well versed in finances and that her dad, we think about the time that we're in right now, and Amy is 38, well, getting ready to be 38, and her dad took her aside as a kid and taught her about investing. So she has this wealth of knowledge, and I think that's beautiful because we think about, girls nowadays and really investing in your girls and getting them prepared. And her dad did that. So I think that's an awesome thing for her to be able to say that, she had all of this knowledge. That's awesome. I hope that more fathers will start following in that tradition and really teaching their daughters their trade or whatever it is that they know, and helping develop them and develop their business minds.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's something that definitely put her at an advantage because I have amazing parents who I love and adore, but I can tell you that growing up, I did not hear anything about investing in the stock market or investing in a 401k or Roth IRA or any of those things. So it's just something that I think a lot of parents, maybe because they don't have the knowledge themselves, so they don't have they're not able to pass that on to their kids. So the fact that she did have that advantage is huge. And so it kind of lets us know that we as parents maybe need to pass some of that knowledge that we have on to our own kids so that we don't have another generation that's coming through that has no idea. Because she said the 401k, people think that that's some sort of marathon. Well, no, it's not. It's not a marathon. It's actually a tool that is available to you through your job. And if your job doesn't do a good job of educating you on how to get started in the 401k, then you're kind of stuck, leaving money on the table, as she described.
Yeah. So definitely make sure that you reach out to Amy. She does have her information on our website in the contributor spot. But I would say reach out to her with questions. She's willing to answer, and she's also on Instagram doing a little teaching as well. So take advantage of that and start working with someone like that. It's great that she's a little bit smaller where you feel like you can go and talk to that person and have that, you know, relationship with your finance person, I think is really great.
Yeah, having that relationship with someone who's at a small firm might be of a benefit to you as opposed to going to some of the big firms like the Fidelities and Charles Schwab's and those great firms. Definitely, they have all the tools that you need, but there's also some benefit to investing in some of the smaller firms as well.
Yes.
We hope you found our conversation as inspiring and thought provoking as we did. If you did, please like and subscribe to our channel. You can also text the show if you're listening to us on one of the podcast platforms. There is a link in the description to text the show. We always like hearing from our listeners and our viewers.
Yes, make sure that you check out our website. It's www.girlieladies.com. You can also read about our guest speakers in the contributor area and follow us on social media. We have an Instagram page at Girlie Ladies, and I have an Instagram of my own. It's at the KJB Effect.
And I'm at Sanji Cosby. You can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on all of the social media platforms. I would love to hear from you. So in the meantime, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most of all, keep growing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.